but she really suffered from very severe anxiety and specifically fear of heights. After pursuing care with us in the office, specifically just neurologically based chiropractic care, she was able to go to Gatlinburg, go on the, what's the big thing that carries people? Yep, cool, thank you. Did that twice on the chairlift, really enjoyed it, no anxiety, no fear of heights anymore. Super cool, because we helped change the brain. So guys, we're gonna start off with statistics. This is the boring part. If anybody's tired, now's a good time to close your eyes, plug back in 5 minutes, okay? But statistically, how impactful is mental health burden? It's pretty impactful. It's like literally the, if not number 1, number 2 leading cause of disability. It's our most expensive disease to treat across our country and unfortunately across the world. So the US on average spends about $300 billion every year in reference to the economic burden of mental health. And the statistics unfortunately are not getting better. They are progressively getting worse. So how much money are we spending in reference to mental health disorders? It's an insane amount of money. Unfortunately, anxiety is impacting roughly 1/3 of the population. It's estimated at $42 billion in economic expense a year. 1 in 8 children meet the criteria for a diagnosable anxiety disorder. Pediatrics are actually prescribed more antipsychotropic medication than any other population in our country, which is kind of sad and a little scary, especially if you read the black box warnings on those medications. Obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder impacts, I think this is probably a low statistic, but an insane amount of people, and anybody with a traumatic event or history. Why does something that happened to us in the past influence our mental and emotional well-being at this time? Obsessive compulsive disorders impact a significant amount of adults, but also children. And again, all these statistics are on the rise. Depression, 15 million American adults and 350 million globally, and women experience or communicate depression at twice the rate of men. Number two cause of disability in the Western world. And 2020, by 2020, which is a little outdated now, but depression will be the 2nd leading cause of disability across the world. And that's 5 years ago, and the data is worse now than it was then. So if everybody that is experiencing and communicating these issues the majority of them are being treated how are we helping most of these individuals? Prescription meds, right? So if more people are being diagnosed, more people are being impacted, more people are being treated, what would you think if the treatment was successful, the statistical data should be doing? Right? I mean, I'm not the smartest tool in the shed, but that seems pretty logical line of thinking to me. So maybe we should start to approach this problem in a different way. And not just in reference to mental health disorders, but and this statistic actually doesn't include two pieces of criteria, but roughly 43% of our children in America have one of 20 chronic health conditions.
Is a smartphone mobile?
I like your thinking. You're not too far off base there. So yeah, guys, it's not just a rise in mental health disorders. It's not just a rise in cancer. It's not just a rise in autism. It's not just a rise in you name it, right? It's just a rise in sickness and disease. And so we've moved further and further away from health, true health and health practices and our understanding of health to help our body to do what it's designed to do, which is to thrive and enjoy this experience and then go meet Jesus at some point in time, right? So what is causing this problem? There's a current theorem in place, and please note that it is a theory. It is not a fact or a law. It is a theory. It is an idea that we are all running with right now in reference to mental health. So the way that we're approaching mental health currently, we're just going to use an example. So let's say this lady suffers dramatically from anxiety or significantly from anxiety. And in this controlled study, we gave her 1 serving of red wine. And after the study, she reported, hey, I felt less anxious. Cool. Now we have a working model. So what would be then the treatment option for this individual working under this paradigm? let's give her a glass of bottled red wine every night forever, and that will help her to manage her anxiety, which is not good, but also not atypical in our environment, correct?
Right.
We are using the same theory in reference to the medications that we're utilizing, okay? So, and it is still a theory. The primary theory is that you have a chemical imbalance or a deficiency of serotonin. Has anybody heard that before?
Yes.
Okay, great. Understand that this is a
Theory.
theory, okay? It has yet to be reliably reproduced in any study of any kind, in any tissue, cerebrospinal fluid, blood, brain, post-mortem autopsies. Still looking for it, okay? This thought was based upon originally a 1960s tuberculosis study where they used an MAO enzyme inhibitor to help the body regulate, at that time, an inflammatory response. And these individuals that were taking this medication to treat their tuberculosis also, as a side effect, reported improvements in their mood and well-being. And so the serotonin reuptake inhibition theory was born. 1960s tuberculosis study, okay? And it is theorized that roughly these serotonin reuptake inhibition drugs, so serotonin is a neurotransmitter, hormone molecule, as it crosses the synaptic cleft, so from one neuron to the next, we want to stop its ability to be reabsorbed. We want it to live in this space for a long period of time to help us to feel better. That is functionally how that may work, okay? There are some serious problems and limitations with this theory that have been proven. Number one is that the receptors lose signaling response and strength over time. Anybody ever put on when you first, sorry, we all did this morning, so that was a dumb question. When you put on your clothes first thing in the morning, do you feel like the fabric and like the temperature of the clothes for like maybe 30 seconds to a minute? You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're still wearing our clothes now, but our brain is filtering out that stimuli as non-threatening, non-important, non-life-threatening induced information. So our receptors lose signaling response over time the more that they are perpetually stimulated. Okay, so that's one thought. Problem number two is that when we take serotonin reuptake inhibition drugs, we are commonly told that it may take weeks to
6 weeks or
months to get into your system. Yet a chemical effect can be seen immediately. So if the chemical effect is immediate, the receptors lose strength over time, but it takes time to build up is that? Yeah, right? It doesn't really, it's conflicting data, correct? And then number three, not all drugs that are shown or purported to improve serotonin transmission actually have positive effects on anxieties and depressions. Really interesting research. So the part of the brain that creates serotonin is called the dorsal raphe nucleus, little part of your brain. Do you know how much serotonin, out of all the serotonin in your body, this makes? Do you think it's like 90%? Or do you think it's 10%?
10%.
Yeah, so the dorsal raphe nucleus, the part of the brain that produces serotonin, makes only 10% of all the serotonin available to you. Where does 90% of it come from?
Elementary in your gut.
Yeah.
Gut and small intestines. Nice job. By the bacteria that live there, and then it is communicated or upregulated via your vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10, which comes from a little hole in the bottom of the skull, from gut to brain. So if we really want to have a dramatic impact on serotonin, what do you think should be your appropriate target? Yeah, absolutely. Very good. So they've done all sorts of cool research on this with animals, mice, people, but they put all sorts of weird lesions, like literally cut that part of the brain out of an animal and then evaluated its mental and emotional social behaviors. No impact on anxiety and depression. Interesting, right? And then fifth kind of bugaboo with this is that if we take away the precursor of serotonin, which is tryptophan, aka eat your turkeys, that doesn't really have an impact on anxiety and depressions either. So there's just some really interesting holes in this theory that we are all being communicated and marketed to. So if depression by itself, we don't still really It's not reliably able to be reproduced, okay? There is a crap ton of research on this. So major depressive disorder out of New England Journal of Medicine, Dr. Bellmaker, talked about numerous studies of norepinephrine, serotonin metabolites. So he's done an insane amount of research, but out of all the research he's done, he's never been able to reliably, and all the data published, find a accurate and reproducible sample in plasma, urine, cerebrospinal fluid, and post-mortem, as well as alive patients with depression, and it's yet to be reliably reproduced. Where they affected 5-HTP, so that's that tryptophan response that we talked about, and really no significant difference on anxieties and depressions in animal models or behaviors. This is Dr. Cowan, thank you, from University of Oxford, published in 2015. Also, do you guys know how medical research works? Like, how long does it take something to be researched before it makes its way into academia?
7 years.
So 10, 15, 20. Yeah. So any of the studies that you see up here that are from 2015 on, they haven't really made its way into curriculum yet. So a lot of the stuff that we're taught to help you with is, running on a 20-year behind model versus what's being talked about in the actual scientific literature. But this gentleman talks about how simple biochemical theories that link low levels of serotonin with depression aren't really tenable anymore. Okay? And this is what Dr. Valenstein talks about too in reference to blaming the brain. Although it's often stated with great confidence that depressed people have a serotonin or norepinephrine issue, evidence actually contradicts these claims. And I actually really enjoy this because he is from the University of Michigan. Now I'm from the great state of Ohio, so I really shouldn't like him, right? But University of Michigan is one of the only institutions left in America that, to my knowledge, does not accept funding from Big Pharma in reference to running their school. Okay, so higher level potentially validity in my personal opinion. This guy is a clinical researcher, so he amassed a whole bunch of data, and he talks about the exact same thing. Contemporary neuroscience research has failed to really confirm any serotonergic lesions of any mental health disorder. And there's actually typically a lot of counter evidence to what's currently being claimed. This is one of my favorite ones. If you guys don't know who Dr. Burns is, his work's pretty influential, kind of high up in the world, right? But his language is fairly strong here. I spent the first several years of my career doing full-time research on brain, serotonin metabolism, and I never have seen any convincing evidence that any psychiatric disorder, including depression, results from a deficiency of brain serotonin. In fact, we cannot even measure brain serotonin levels in living human beings, because there is no way to test this theory. And so forth and so on in reference to money. Right? So, really cool. There's been a lot of placebo, nocebo studies on this, where 29 of these studies, drug or placebo, and these 29 studies, so the Cochrane meta-analysis is a very high level of research, basically takes a bunch of randomized controlled trials and compresses the data. So they took 29 studies where these individuals had active placebos, meaning they gave you a sugar pill. So you felt something was happening to you. And in those studies where they did give them an active placebo, 25% of the people studied reported a positive improvement that were actually given the medication, where 75% of the people reported a positive improvement given the active placebo. Yeah, right? But a placebo is meant to be nothing, like saline, like you shouldn't have any sort of response from it. But they gave them one to kind of basically evaluate the psychological aspect of it. Which
Sounds like they should figure out what's in that placebo.
Sugar. And if you guys are familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you're not, I highly encourage you to check him out and his work. He just published the largest study ever done of its kind of real-time MRI, magnetic resonant imaging, functional magnetic resonant imaging, where they're taking real-time scans of people's brains. And he's doing some really cool things in reference to meditation and prayer and just people, brain chemistry changing. It's baffling. It's really, really neat. So if you guys haven't checked out his work, it's really cool. But really good book called You Are the Placebo. In this book, he references a study where he talks about the nocebo effect, meaning everybody in the study was told they could potentially receive a placebo and not the actual active medication that they were trialing. Guess how many people reported that they didn't feel any difference or they felt worse? All of the participants, no matter if they were given the medication or not. I'll be darned. Okay, and then out of the Harvard School of Medicine, this gentleman, Dr. Kirsch, talks about, man, okay, so if the data is telling us this, really what's the point of pushing serotonin reuptake inhibition drugs? If they're not much better than the placebo, in fact, some studies indicate that the placebo is actually better, why would we take some of these petrochemical derivatives that ultimately jack up the methylation of our body? And if you guys don't understand DNA methylation, that is at a different conversation, and that was topic number 1. So if you guys want to come back to that, you're welcome to do so, or you're welcome to rewatch it. But many of these medications have really kind of wild side effects. Really interesting insomnias where people are actually like going through life while they're sleeping, where they'll like drive their kids to school and drive home, and then they'll wake up and be like, oh, like sleep driving, sleep shopping, like that's a thing. Long-term weight gain, nausea, diarrhea, sexual dysfunction, 70 to 80% of these on SSRIs, so completely impotent as well. The really crazy stuff though, guys, is that if you read the black box warning label, and I wanted to embed a new drug commercial that I saw like 2 days ago, because it just made me laugh. I'm sorry if that's insensitive, but it was hilarious. Have you guys saw the commercial for Vylar yet?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, hilarious. Okay, because it's like 30 seconds of somebody being happy and smiling and dancing, and then it's like 2 minutes of, you may want to consider not taking this medication because it can kill you. It was like the summation of the next 2 minutes. It was I wanted to embed it. If you guys haven't seen that, like the new one from 2025, go to YouTube and type in Vylar commercial and just have a good laugh, okay?
Well, we all have them. So you could die.
So the concerning part about these medications in reference to DNA methylation is it is affecting our ability to reproduce in our offspring, and what our offspring are, how they are interacting and showing up in the world. This is called epigenetic effects, okay? What the choices that we make today influence how our DNA is passed along to our kids. So, and what diseases can be expressed or not expressed. And unfortunately, again, the population in the United States which is prescribed the most amount of this medication is pediatrics. And if you look at the black box warning, number 1 on there should state, this medication may increase homicidal and suicidal ideation. And if you guys are a little conspiracy minded like I am, if you look at the majority of the mass shootings that have occurred in the last 5 to 10 years, you will find a very interesting correlation or association. I'm not saying all of it's done via medication. Obviously, these individuals have some serious issues and traumas, but the data's there, okay? All right, and good question to ask is how much data can we actually even trust? And as a physician, this is a complicated one for me. I'm conflicted about this because I base a lot of my clinical protocols upon what is being currently researched. You just have to find the right researchers being published in the right journals. But if you, anybody see that the lead editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, who was there for like 35 years, retired maybe 3-5 years ago, and she was famous and quoted for saying like 75% of what's published there, trash. Crazy, right? So out of the 74 FDA-approved trials that were used to say, hey, this medication helps people with anxieties and depressions, 38 of the 74 studies reported a positive improvement, meaning people on these medications did better or scored better on their anxiety and depression scores. And out of those 38 that presented a positive effect, 37 of them were truly published. Out of the 74, 37 presented a negative impact, but only 3 of them got published. Right? Like, interesting. So, unfortunately, the terminology that you have a chemical imbalance in your brain is not necessarily 100% accurate. Okay? That's really what we're just trying to get to here. And then let's figure out ways that we can actually help improve our serotonin levels and reduce our inflammatory levels and help our body to heal and thrive. That's the purpose of this. But first we have to kind of change what we've been taught so that way we can accept a new way to do things. You guys cool with that? Okay, cool. And unfortunately, why do we think this stuff's going on? In my heart of hearts, I want to say because we want to help people, but there's a lot of, money, Greed, politics, insurance companies, government, however you want to package it, there's a lot there, right? So, yeah, I know, not the most uplifting information, okay? So a couple cool questions to ask, or a couple questions I want you to percolate on, is why do people with mental health disorders also have other various conditions? Somebody with depression doesn't only have depression. They typically have other stuff, right? Yeah, or what, chicken and egg, right? Which came first? So why are these mental and emotional issues so highly correlated to early life events of stress? Let's talk about neurology. Yeah, let's talk about neurology and what we're programming our brain to do. What if mental health issues are not really the disease that we're trying to treat, but just a symptom of you not being as healthy as you should be? Right? And then what if mental health conditions are actually more of a whole body systemic problem, which is what the literature actually shows. So guys, we all drove something like this to get here tonight, unless you got a cool Tesla and you like, and it drove you here, that'd be kind of cool. But what does this amazing thing need to do or need to have in order to get from point A to point B? Cool. It needs fuel, great. If we got just a tank of gas here sitting next to a car, is it gonna move forward? No, we need engine key. Yep, so we need all of our parts and we need all of our power. But if we have a fully juiced up car and it's got all of its parts and it's in good working order, is it gonna get from A to B or is it missing one more thing? Say it loud, Paula. Driver. Yeah, it needs information to coordinate the parts and the power together, to get it to do something, to coordinate action, right? What about this cool thing that we all have floating around in our pockets nowadays? What does it need to work? Right? We got a motherboard, keyboard. Now that AI's around, this analogy doesn't work as much. But ideally, it needs somebody inputting intelligent command in order to get the parts and the power to organize and do something with it. And same thing with this cool system that we get to drive around in every day. What does this thing need to work? Parts, power, information. Very good. So A&P 101. Name some of the parts of the body.
Brain, heart,
Yeah, cool. Brain, heart, lungs. Good. Now, interesting. You guys named the brain, which I'm very proud of because you're in this office. So thank you. What about the power? What's the power for the body?
Energy.
Cool. Where does energy come from typically? What? How do we nourish our mitochondria? How do we nourish our mitochondria? Yeah. Power comes from the sun, air, food, right? Chemistry. And then what's the information in the body? That's an interesting one because there's nobody inputting command to the body. Oh, I like that answer. But the brain's a part. Interesting thought, right? So the brain's a part. So the quality of the information or the piezoelectrical current or wave traveling over the neurology, the neural tissue, is what guides your parts and your power together. So any musicians in the room? Cool. Anybody play the guitar? Sweet. Do you have to tune your guitar from time to time, sir?
Yes.
When you tune your guitar, what are you doing to the string?
Making the tension even tighter, less tight.
Yeah, tight, less tight. When you make something super tight and you pluck it, it vibrates at a higher pitch, a higher frequency. If you loosen it up, it vibrates at a lower pitch or a larger waveform. This is physics applied to the body. So your neural tissue works the exact same way. It vibrates and it resonates, and the frequency at which it vibrates influences the speed and the accuracy of the transmission of information traveling over your body. So what happens if we put too much tension on nerve tissue? The information gets distorted, right? Crazy research shows us that the amount of tension equivalent to the weight of a dime can inhibit neural impulses upwards of 60%. So when you're a little out of tune, things don't work the way they're supposed to, okay? So in the world now, we have lots of doctors focusing on lots of different parts. And this is kind of where we get lost in the sauce of the medical system, okay? Because we have specialists for everything, right? We have nose doctors, ear doctors, toe doctors, heart doctors, lung doctors, liver doctors, and thank God that they are so very specialized in that organ system or in that part. But what we sometimes fail to see is how does that part interact with other parts. What's upstream and downstream to what that purpose of that thing is, right? Like, how many of you guys have been told about like hormone replacement therapies? Right? Cool. So where do hormones, how are hormones generated? Where do hormones come from?
Endocrine system.
Endocrine system. What does the endocrine system need in order to produce hormones?
Nutrition.
Cool. Your hypothalamus is part of your brain that precedes your pituitary gland. Your hypothalamus has to stimulate and tell your pituitary gland to do certain things. Your pituitary gland releases your growth hormone, your thyroid stimulating hormone, your luteinizing hormone, your oxytocin, your prolactin. All these amazing hormones come from your pituitary. So who here has been told or been diagnosed with like various thyroid conditions? Like you have low T3. So we're gonna put more T3 in your body. Yeah? Why would the body not produce T3? It doesn't have enough TSH, the stimulating hormone. Why would it not produce enough stimulating hormone? Well, the hypothalamus isn't telling the pituitary to do what it needs to do, right? What does the hypothalamus need in order to do its job? So the point I'm trying to make to you is when we are so very specialized and focused on the minutia, we miss what's upstream and downstream from the problem, which is where looking at the body from more of a holistic standpoint of being like, hey, let's just look at some basic health principles of the body needs information and it needs a good power supply. So what if we give it better information and better power? And if it's a self-adapting, self-healing organism and we're giving it better nutrition, we're giving it better information, what's gonna happen? It's gonna get better, right? So, luckily, this office, we focus heavily on the quality of the information, traveling over the neurology, and we are starting to scratch the surface on functional nutrition, functional med, and helping people with the biochemistry side of things. Now, because our body is made up of parts, unfortunately, it's gonna do what? Yeah, nobody lives forever, right? So what would potentially accelerate the breakdown or the decay of this beautiful plant? Let's say this plant's a peach tree and we want it to bear fruit.
Our choices.
Ah, good. These are all really good examples of this fruit tree's lifestyle and environment, which is not going to allow for the appropriate expression of this intelligent mechanism to do its job. Right? Same thing is true of your body, right? We give it less light, less movement, polluted water, food, toxins, then things are gonna get a little funky. That's a lot of stress applied to the body, and if the body doesn't mitigate and manage that stress physically, chemically, mentally, and emotionally, then we're gonna have a lot of inflammation. And if we have a lot of inflammation, then we're gonna have various diseases, right? So, symptoms, good or bad, guys?
Good.
Neither.
I like the neither answer. That's the camp I'm in, right? Neither. Just intelligent feedback, right? Like if I run out and sprain my ankle, I'm like, oh man, I gotta go run another 5 miles. And he goes like, dude, you haven't run 5 miles in a long time. It's like, I know, I'm getting back to you, okay? Brush from the kids. But if you go out and sprain an ankle, your ankle blows up, gets inflamed, right? If I start to suppress that inflammation with a bunch of Oxycontin and NSAIDs and Tylenol, and I go out and run more, I'm gonna create more stress and damage, right? We're doing the same thing with our own symptoms and our own diseases in our own bodies. So rather than suppressing symptoms, we really should start to listen to those guys, okay? So this is a really good way for us to kind of change how what we've just talked about is packaged. The environment and our lifestyle is placing a lot of burden on the body. Would you guys agree, potentially, somehow? Would you guys agree that our environment today is potentially a little more toxic chemically than it was maybe 30 years ago?
Yes.
Cool. Would you guys potentially agree with me that our environment is a little more, from a perception standpoint, stressful now than it was like 40 years ago? Anybody turn on the news in the last 20 years and feel good about life? Not usually, right? And if you really start to dive into the psychology of color, that'll be really interesting to you, because then you see all the stuff that they want you to freak out about is usually coming across as a ticker in what color?
Red.
Nice job, guys. Psychology of color. Yep. Okay, so we have a relatively stressful induced environment. And is an organic apple today the same nutritional equivalent of an organic apple 30 years ago?
No.
No. So most diseases come from bad information, toxicities, or deficiencies. Okay? So if we can fix bad information, toxicities, and deficiencies, then your body can do a much better job managing stressors and inflammation. So we have this environmental load. We have 4 really important systems in this quadrangle here. Can you guys list them off for me at the top? Nice. Good. Good. You guys notice how all the arrows are two-sided? Because each system affects the other. You cannot have a healthy brain without a healthy gut. You cannot have a healthy gut without a healthy brain. They are one and the same. The most dense collection of neurons outside of your brain lives where? Gut. And then outside of that, new study just published like 2 weeks ago. Guess where the next largest collection of neurons are located? Your appendix.
Really?
Brand new study.
Wow.
Wow. That's a great question. We're starting to figure that out. Like, maybe we shouldn't be cutting random things out of people's bodies. Right? I know, right? Gallbladders, appendixes, wisdom teeth. There's a lot to unpack there. Okay? So we have all these different systems, and they're all interacting with each other. And based upon this individual's genetics, what happened 14, 15 generations prior to them, it's going to influence how they're interacting with the world. And if this is not going so well, and these systems are not performing the way that they're designed to, and we have a higher environmental load of burden and toxicity, we're going to end up with various problems and diseases, correct?
Yes.
So rather than focusing on, do you guys know how many ICD codes there are? Like how many different diagnoses somebody can have? Like hundreds of thousands. So rather than focusing here, getting lost in the woods, what if we take more of a 30,000 foot view and say, hey, who do we have in front of us? How healthy are these systems and what's going on in their lifestyle? Let's change some of those variables and let's see what happens. Cool? And so this is happening to all of us at varying levels and degrees. Has anybody ever heard of something called leaky gut syndrome?
Yeah.
Cool. Who has it?
I do.
All of us. Everybody say, me. Okay? We all got it in varying degrees. Okay? The reason why is because, well, your gut, your digestive system, what's its job? What's its function? It has 3. Nice. Absorption, elimination. Very good. So if the digestive system is not eliminating and absorbing effectively, that will lead to toxicities and deficiencies. Okay? Or we may be supplementing, putting a ton of stuff in our body, but if we can't absorb it, what's the point, right? Or we may be putting a lot of stuff in the body, but we're not eliminating waste the way that we should, and then typically it'll show up in what other organ? What's the other organ in the body besides the digestive system that is an excretory organ? Skin. Cool. So our psoriases, our eczemas, our acnes, all of our inflammatory skin conditions that we give immunosuppressive drugs for. You know what's a better way to fix it? Fix your gut. Do you know that you guys are seeing, I don't know about you guys, but maybe I'm biased because clinically, I take care of a lot of children. Are you guys like noticing this in the world that so many infants and toddlers have wild skin inflammatory conditions? Are you guys seeing that? I know I'm seeing it clinically. So this is happening on larger scales, shorter windows of time, unfortunately. So things that affect leaky gut are going to affect something called your microbiome. Does anybody know what that means?
You know, there's a microbiome on your skin.
Yes.
We put aluminum under our armpits. Bacteria are supposed to do that job.
Yes, they are. And your microbiome starts to produce antibiotics in response to bacterium that is not part of your normal self.
There's different parts of your body where different bacteria are necessary to break down what is being excreted from your skin.
Yeah, like your urethra is supposed to have more lactobacillus in order to prevent UTIs. So anybody that's a chronic UTI sufferer, you're missing lactobacillus. You need more of it. Okay? So our microbiome is responsible for psychoneuroimmune modulation. Psycho, mental and emotional well-being. Neuro, performance of your brain. Immune, your competence of your immune system and how it interacts with the world. Your microbiome, the bacteria that live on and in you, are responsible for those 3 things. How many things do we put in and on our body that disrupt our microbiome?
shampoo,
Lotions,
conditioners, laundry
makeup,
detergents, perfumes,
dryer sheets,
hand sanitizer,
antibiotic material, yeah.
right? Even, I mean, if you looking at what organic cotton does versus polyester in reference to your microbiome and the resonance of your nervous system is kind of baffling when you like really dive into the weeds, guys. So the microbiome is super, super important to the health of the human being. And things that disrupt the microbiome and the transference of the microbiome. Where do you guys think you get your microbiome from? Where's your first bacterial exposure? Coming from your mama. Coming through the vaginal canal, okay? You're supposed to come through the vaginal canal. When we don't come through the vaginal canal and we're born cesarean, we see much higher incidences of neurodevelopmental issues, cancers, and childhood illnesses, specifically chronic diseases, because we don't get the passing of the microbiome. The microbiome is responsible for psychoneuroimmune modulation. So the microbiome can be disrupted via cesarean section, recurrent antibiotics, which the American Academy of Pediatrics, if you actually look at it, says antibiotics, it's contraindicated to give them to children.
All right.
I don't know about you guys, but I had a whole lot of antibiotics growing up. Various medications, recreational and pharmaceutical, poor dietary performance, and then a hypersympathetic response. When I say the term hypersympathetic response, it means chronic stress. If your body's in a chronic state of stress, well, let's work backwards, okay? If I can I pick on you? If I put you in a burning building, would you want to like sit down and have a nice meal, candlelit dinner, put on some music? No. Okay. Would you want to run to the bathroom and like pull up your phone, start scrolling, use the bathroom for like 15, 20 minutes? No, right? Would you want to go to sleep? No. Would anybody want to make a baby in that situation? No, it's like, it's my last shot. It's like, no, nobody's gonna like be doing that when the building's burning down, okay? So, when we're in a chronic stress-induced state, the body will actually start to pull resources away from the digestive system, the reproductive system, and push it to the heart and the lungs and the extremities. So that way we can fight and flight, orphans, right? So if we are constantly in this chronic stress-induced state, then we're going to be pulling resources away from the GI system that's already having a hard time, which is going to cause a really interesting inflammatory response in the body, which is going to be the precursor to the majority of our autoimmune type conditions, hypersensitivities, allergens, and if that's left cooking under the surface for months, years, decades, especially with heavy metal toxicities that break down the blood-brain barrier, then we end up with neurologic inflammation, right? I don't know. Tough, right? Kind of a bummer. But this is what's happening to everybody at scale. So we need to start to figure out how to influence these factors upstream so we can help the body do its job. Okay? And is there research on this, Doc? Yes, there's so much. So is depression an inflammatory disorder? Published in 2011, depression is commonly linked with increased levels of peripheral inflammatory biomarkers, meaning cytokines. Depression, theorized, is likely an inflammatory condition. What other studies exist in reference to inflammation and depression? Quite a lot. And really interesting is that people that do take, I don't know if it's this one, people that take SSRIs, not other types of antidepressants, have reduced inflammatory markers in their blood. So the serotonin reuptake theory, not so awesome.
What's an SSRI?
Serotonin reuptake inhibition medication. Okay? So really, rather than focusing on serotonin, we should be focusing on inflammation. Okay? Stress-induced depression. So in this study, they took a bunch of mice and they put them in really like terrible lifestyle conditions. Really morbid study a while back. They took a mama mouse and every time she drank water, they electrocuted her. And they mapped her stress response in her brain. And then they bred her. And guess how many generations down the line, even when the mouse was not introduced to stressful stimuli, it went to go drink water. How many generations down the line, when the baby mouse went to go drink water, they mapped the same stress response in the brain? 14.
Wow.
14 generations down the line. Okay? So things we can do to animals, we shouldn't do to humans. It's for debate, but in the study, when we change the environmental stimuli in the social behaviors of mice, it dramatically influences anxieties and depressions. stress, inflammation, and depression. So back in the day when we were more Paleolithic, hunting and gathering, doing our thing, sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing. Our perceived stressors were more binary, right? Like fire, or saber-toothed tiger, or a neighboring tribe, war, right? Nowadays, most of our stressors are more perceived, right? Like how many of us get in life-altering conflicts every day? No? Yeah, that perfect answer, Paula. They just feel like it. Nice. How many of us spend time looking at blue light for more than, 6 hours a day? Right? That messes up our stress response and our melatonin levels. How many of us like to drive in rush hour traffic? Right? So follow this line of thinking with me. Who here wakes up to an alarm clock? Okay, so we're waking up in alarmed physiology, right? And then what does the common American diet, or the SAD diet, standard American diet, what do we typically like to consume for breakfast on average?
Cereal.
Coffee, cereal. Good. What does coffee do to the body? Can. Mycotoxins, depends on where you're sourcing it from. But caffeine is going to be a fatigue inhibitor. It doesn't actually give you energy. It binds to fatigue receptors and makes you think you're less tired. Okay? It kind of works the opposite way in the way it's marketed, which is interesting. But then we like to consume cereal, which is very high in synthetic crap and carbohydrates, right? So then we're running on sugar, and then we pour a bunch of milk over it, and we all lost the enzyme to use milk as energy after the age of 2. So that's highly inflammatory to the body. And there's this cool stuff in milk called casein, which is a milk protein that none of us can actually do anything with, and actually binds to opioid receptors in the brain, which is why we want more milk. So then we are in an inflammatory state from waking up, an inflammatory state from what we ate. And then we get to sit in rush hour traffic, which is a very fun event, especially when school zones are back in session. I don't know about you guys, but I passed through 3 on my way here, and it makes a 20-minute commute, a 50-minute commute. Right? And my wife's like, she's definitely the better human of the two of us. She's like, isn't it great that you have more time to listen to a podcast that you like? I'm like, yes, it is. Thank you, sweetheart, for that redirection. And then we get to go to work and sit in front of a computer in a flexed posture for more than 8 to 12 hours a day. And then we drive home in rush hour traffic, and we turn on the news, and we cap the night off with some red wine. And we do it again for days, months, and years. And we're like, why did I get so sick? Okay? So this stress, inflammation, depression model has a lot more validity to it in reference to what is being published in the literature. And back in the day, again, binary stressors. Now today, perceived stressors, but your brain and your body does not differentiate between portals of stress. You can eat your way into disease. You can think your way into disease. Yes? Yep. Okay, so where does health come from, guys? It's already gifted to you. It comes from inside you, right? Your body knows what to do. Actually, pretty much every single medication that's ever been made either inhibits or speeds up something that already happens inside you on its own. Like blood pressure. As we age, does our cardiovascular system, nobody lives forever, right? So as we age, does our cardiovascular system become less efficient at pumping blood? Yeah. So as a physiological adaptive response, we want our blood pressure to go because the elasticity of our blood vessels becomes less, right? However, so in other countries, there is a sliding scale for blood pressure. In our country, everybody, no matter if you're 80 and 300 pounds or 12 and 60 pounds, should be 120 over 80.
They want that to be 70.
They do. They actually want to drop it another 10 points. Yeah. So, guys, health is really already innately given to you. It comes from inside you. And it's all based upon the power of the body and the information that travels over this really cool thing called your nervous system. Made up of your brain, spinal cord, and nerve roots. It vibrates and resonates and communicates roughly 11 trillion bits of data every second of every day through your body. And the amount of tension equivalent to the weight of a dime can speed up or slow down or inhibit or distort normal impulses upwards of 60%. And if that happens for months, years, decades, then things don't work as well as they should. All of that data travels through the upper neck. We call this the foramen magnum, and the top bone in the spine is called the atlas, which I think is really cool in reference to Greek mythology, because Atlas was made to hold up the world. Kind of cool. So Atlas axis, it's estimated that 78 trillion nerve fibers pass through this area, individual fibers. And then there's a really important artery that runs through the neck that supplies blood to roughly behind 20 to 30% of the brain, including the brainstem, the cerebellum, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. So your upper neck's kind of important, guys. The most dense collection of what's called mechano and proprioceptors. So we're gonna go backwards a little bit. When babies develop, do they come out walking, talking, grabbing the car keys and hitting the road? No, they have to learn how to control their what first? And then they learn how to control their what? And then they learn how to control their trunk. And they learn how to control cross-body movements. And then they can learn how to control how to stand up on two legs, which is a really complex neurologic process, which is why the majority of living creatures in the world walk on 4 legs. Walking on 2 legs is like kind of a miracle if you really understand how it works. So the brain organizes itself based upon the information it receives. The brain is not a creator of data, it is a processor of data. So the quality of the information it gets influences its organization, and the quality of the output it derives. Where does the majority of input that the brain needs to grow and develop come from? We just went through it. What do babies have to do in order for their brains to grow? They have to learn how to move. Joint position and movement stimulates something called mechano and proprioceptive input, which is the highest quantity, the highest volume of data from body to brain, to get the brain to work the way that it's supposed to. And so anybody grew up playing a game of telephone with like 30 kids in a circle? Yeah? Cool. So when 30 kids are sitting in a circle, when the first kid says something to the second kid, by the time it gets to the 30th kid, that message is what? All wreaked havoc, right? Your spine has 28 vertebrae and 33 bones. Saw a cool post recently. Jesus lived 33 years. You have 33 bones in your spine. That was kind of neat. So you have 28 vertebrae. And if each of those 28 little buggers in there are screwed up, by the time information travels from your toes to your brain, it's not the right information anymore. And then your brain's like, dude, I don't know what you want me to do with this. I'll go through checks and balances and see what I can figure out and then send a response. And this all happens in milliseconds, nanoseconds of time. It's really, truly baffling how we are created. So your whole nervous system is based upon reflexes. It's involuntary. How many of you are actively controlling your heart rate right now? None, right? There's like trillions of things happening inside of us every second of every day. And this is all run via the autonomic nervous system, meaning all the stuff that happens inside you without you actually being consciously aware of it, okay? Here's kind of a bugaboo with our healthcare system, and all of you that are patients here know the statistics, so I really hope to see you shine in this. Most people in the world base 100% of their healthcare decisions on what?
How they feel.
Good, how they feel. Okay, your nervous system, brain, spinal cord, nerve roots. What percentage of your nervous system is for feeling, sensory function?
5%.
Say it again.
5%.
Almost. 20. 20% of neural data is sensory input or sensory tissue. Out of the 20% that's sensory tissue, do you know what percentage of those are pain fibers? Sir in the front right-hand corner, who just said? 5%. Nailed it. Okay, so most people are walking around basing 100% of their healthcare decisions on 20% or 5% of the 20% of the 100%. So 80% of your neurology does this for you. Helps you to stand upright, helps you to move, helps you to organize your heart, your lungs, your white blood cells, your red blood cells, everything that happens inside you. Okay?
By 5%, you mean 1/4 of the 20%?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not 5% of the 20%.
Thank you. So when we look at the breakdown of the autonomic nervous system, bundles of nerve tissue in the upper neck and the pelvis, when they are stimulated, help calm things down. Bundles of nerve tissue in the thorax speed things up. So fight or flight, rest, digest. Very generalized, but in summary, that's how it works. Okay? And we can measure how stressed out the system is by using something called heart rate variability. We do this for all of you, which is really cool. HRV is a gold standard diagnostic technology to evaluate how stressed out and how well is that nervous system performing. And what's cool is in mental health literature is that everybody that suffers with depression and anxiety has lower heart rate variability scores. Okay? People that perform really well with elevated or high heart rate variability scores don't typically have a whole lot of mental and emotional issues. So we use HRV at the office to evaluate how well your nervous system is performing and regulating the world. Now, why are early life stressors so predictive of what's going to happen in, or our mental and emotional perception of the world? Right? It's imprinted into us, so that way we can survive more effectively if we're in that situation again in the future. So individuals with early life stressors do have higher levels of systemic inflammation because they're constantly interacting with the world as this is a scary place to be, which is why we need to go through some serious healing from those underlying traumas in order to help the body to perceive the world differently so we don't have that chronic stress, inflammation, and breakdown of those disease processes. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, guys. Super cool book if you guys are interested in reading. Brain That Changes Itself. Very influential on helping you to understand how hopeful this all is, because your body is constantly in a state of adaptation and change. And if we start to just tweak little variables, it's going to compound and improve over time. So here's your playbook in order to help yourself to get well in reference to mental health well-being, but really in reference to the majority of disease processes that we face. Okay? Number one, when do we want results?
Anyway.
How long does it take to get results?
A year.
Variable. Every person faces different. But almost always, as a general principle, healing requires time. Just the way the cookie crumbles, man. Healing requires time. Depends on what you're trying to heal. Sometimes it takes a lifetime, sometimes it takes a day or a week. Okay? Healing requires time. But one of the primary principles for healing is the nervous system. We have to make sure that the information or the quality of the information being transmitted over the body is accurate and beneficial to your brain. Because if your brain's constantly getting crappy input, it's going to make it really hard for your body to heal itself. Fair enough? Cool. Number two, power and fuel supply. If we got the wrong foods going in and we're constantly distorting that microbiome and causing an inflammatory response in the body, we may get adjusted 7 ways to Sunday, but we're constantly poisoning ourselves. And it makes it really hard to get the body to heal holistically and systemically. Okay? So in a true healthcare model, we should be improving the neurology and improving the gut together, simultaneously. Would be perfect and ideal, but just normal human functions is when we try to change like 90% of everything we do every day, a lot of resistance to that. It's a lot to take on. It's like, wait a minute, I have to go to the grocery, I have to shop different, I have to budget different, I have to change what I do in my morning, my evening, my afternoon. Like, how am I supposed to change my entire life? I get it. Right? It's usually why we start with one and then work into the next, or start with one, work into the next. But in a perfect model, if we are in a perfectly controlled clinical environment, and we have no issues with time, money, anything, if we could address both of those things, we would get way further in the game faster. Okay? In reference to healing your gut and your gut lining, do you guys know how long it takes the gut to turn over, to replace itself?
7 years.
Negative. Whole body, 7 years. Gut
faster.
Gut lining at 90 to 110 days. Okay? So if we have some interesting issues like a diverticulitis or a gastritis, you will see basically symptoms go away in less than 90 days. But if you want to heal it, you need to give your body 2 repair cycles, which means you're going to have to be willing to make some lifestyle modifications for how long?
6 months.
6 months. It's not a bad exchange, right? But what happens if we go back to eating coffee and ice cream and cereal every day? And we're going to be back in the same situation, which is why I have a huge problem with the word cure. I think it's a bill of goods that we can't deliver. Okay? Because the body's in a constant dynamic state of change. So curing anything permanently doesn't really make sense.
It's a phase.
Yeah, temporary, right? But cure has such a permanence to the word, correct? So again, we just need to kind of change how we look at things. That's a big bugaboo I have with people coming into the office sometimes. Is they're like, Doc, how long until I'm cured? Dude, do you live in gravity? Do you always have some kind of stress on your body? So how long should you care for yourself?
Always.
Always and forever, right? But seriously, we truly are interested in longevity and well-being. It's a lifestyle. It is just part of life, how we care for each other and how we show up for each other. But it starts with information and power. Once those two things work really well, we give the body a couple cellular repair cycles to work through, and you do get a whole new body roughly every 7 years. Then our body can really do some pretty amazing things in healing some serious chronic illnesses. Has anybody been kind of in the world around like the new like alternative cancer stuff and the very, very high success rates that people are achieving outside of certain governing bodies and administrations? Yep. If you are not aware of this information that's currently happening, I highly encourage you to check it out. One of my personal friends and mentors, Dr. Pete Sulak over in Knoxville, amazing guy, diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer like 8 months ago. Okay? Was given a 0.001% chance to live. Completely cured, 6 months. If you would like to follow his story, I would encourage you to do so, because there are very specific ways that you can address cancers. And if you want to really understand the history of this, you go back to the 1930s, Dr. Otto Warburg, talking about the Warburg effect. If you understand that, then you can understand how to change cancer. Okay? But it gives the body the opportunity to repair, because we have effectively helped the body to communicate, gave the body what it needs from a biochemistry standpoint. The body can start to detox and rid itself of all the crap, and we can start to really engage in really wonderful lifestyle practices, because it's really hard to like go out and do all the things that you want to do when you feel like crap all the time, right? Ma'am.
So what do you use to help with cancer? Does some of that also help with anyone diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's as well? Because they're
Good.
Yeah.
But Alzheimer's and dementia has a very heavy association with glycemic management. Elevations of blood sugar, which then causes the degradation of those small blood vessels, which then causes the decay of the brain. It's dementia and Alzheimer's could also be called peripheral neuropathy. It's just peripheral neuropathy is killing the nerve tissue in your feet because you don't get enough blood and oxygen. Alzheimer's dementia, killing the nerve tissue in the brain because you're not getting enough blood and oxygen.
Circulatory.
Circulatory, yes sir. Yeah, partially.
There is some evidence that circulatory problems is what is behind tinnitus.
Tinnitus, I agree with you there. I think it's mixed, because in my personal,
There's lots of things.
yeah, in my clinical experience, it's like 50-50. Some people, we can fix it, and some people don't respond. And if it's a vascular issue, because the artery that supplies this area comes through the upper neck, we typically can help those individuals. Some individuals, it's true neurologic damage. And nerve tissue is the slowest healing tissue of the body, so that sometimes
But it does heal. So
yes, and yeah. So the nervous system is the only system in the body that doesn't like really effectively replace itself. Very well. So I got just a cool testimony from the office. Trina, in reference to her mental and emotional well-being after being under chiropractic care, used to battle extreme fatigue, brain fog, aches, pains, poor sleep, anxieties, appetites, just really having a hard time going through life. After completing her initial care plan, she was sleeping better, eating better, thinking better, took on a new job, present again with family, be able to shut off and actually power her brain down and get to bed. Just her body's doing what it's designed to do now. So what's the disconnect, guys? Ultimately, it comes from spinal structure. Okay? If the spine is not aligned in the way that it's designed to, specifically specific curvatures of what you look like from the side of your spine, the neck curvature is less than 20 degrees, your brain does not work the way it's supposed to. Information physically slows down. Really cool study on asymptomatic collegiate athletes. They took college kids and broke them into 2 groups. One group, curvatures of greater than 20 degrees in the neck. Other group, curvatures less than 20 degrees in the neck. Every single measure of human performance, vertical, balance, hand-eye coordination, squat, thrust, was poorer in the group of curvatures of less than 20 degrees and better of curvatures of greater than 20 degrees. So we don't mean to be like mean or rude or like, oh, I'm gonna go get adjusted today and they're gonna ask me if I'm doing my homework. I don't know if I should go. Yeah, okay. Just do your best you can, okay? But again, really cool research published about 3 weeks ago by Dean Harrison shows that if patient compliance drops below 92%, you can expect 1 degree less change for every percentage dropped. Wow, is right. First study of its kind ever. Super cool data.
I'll get on my blocks.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Get after it, Deputy. All right, so guys, if our neck's all jacked up, it messes with blood flow to the brain, cerebrospinal fluid to the brain. Now, do you think if your brain is not getting enough blood and cerebrospinal fluid, your body internally is going to be a little more stressed? Do you think your body internally would elevate your blood pressure in order to get more blood to your brain? Right? So alterations in the mechanics of the neck influence blood flow and cerebrospinal fluid circulation. Do you guys know what the purpose of cerebrospinal fluid is? Like what it does for the body? Number one's protection, buoyancy. If anybody has little people in their lives, they're trauma monsters. And when they run their head through drywall, why does their brain not explode inside their skull? Because we have cerebrospinal fluid, this buoyant viscous fluid that protects it. But cerebrospinal fluid also nourishes neural tissue and removes metabolic waste from the nervous system. How do you flush crap out of your brain? Circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. You guys, what organ in your body uses the most amount of energy throughout the day?
Brain.
So as a byproduct of chemistry, every chemical interaction or reaction has waste, a waste product, right? How do you get crap out of your brain? Circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. How does cerebrospinal fluid circulate? Spinal mechanics. Spine doesn't move, you can't flush crap out of your brain. Okay? Is there data on this?
So you're
Yes.
saying sitting in a chair reading a book makes you think slower and slower and slower.
Ooh, interesting. The fixation of your sacrum, yes, but the actual cognitive activity of reading, probably no. But sitting for long durations of time, not awesome. Because again, mechano and proprioceptive input, joint position and movement, that's what floods brain with input. Okay? So Heidi Havoc, really amazing power woman. She talks like a sailor and she's a New Zealander, so she's got a really cool accent. She cusses all the time, so she's really fun to listen to. Amazing PhD researcher, okay? She's a power woman. She's been publishing all this really cool stuff in the Journal of Clinical Neuroscience and Neurophysiology, talking about how spinal function just dramatically influences brain function. Sorry, Fran, you good?
That's all right.
Good. Okay. This is not unique to chiropractic. Jeremy, MD, can't pronounce that name, in the Journal of Neuropsychiatry shows that movement of the spine influences the brain and the cerebellum. Not surprising, but research shows us that adjusting the neck where those bundles of parasympathetic nerve fibers are helps to downregulate that fight or flight mechanism or that stress response. In fact, it's actually been measured in your blood serum, those C-reactive protein, those cytokines that we talked about, those inflammatory markers in your blood. They are less of them are in your blood 20 minutes post-adjustment. Your body becomes more efficient at regulating inflammation 20 minutes after the adjustment. And your cortisol levels drop too. So if you guys come in here and you're like, man, I get adjusted and those guys are so nice and it's such a cool place to be and I leave feeling great, they're just like the nicest people, it's because what's happening inside you. It's not this, okay? Subluxation is an autonomic balance. Individuals that are under chiropractic care systemically have higher heart rate variability analysis. They are better at regulating body temperature and inflammatory load. They typically have reduced C-reactive protein and cytokines floating around the bloodstream. They typically have better blood flow and cerebrospinal fluid circulation to the brain. They typically actually have better brain activity and less utilization of resources to perform the same function. So people post-adjustment, their brain gets more efficient and uses less glucose to do the same activities. Lights up your prefrontal cortex by like 20%, and the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that develops later in life. That's why ladies, you're like men grow up, like we're trying, our brains just aren't there yet. Okay, 20, 25 years of age, and the prefrontal cortex starts to activate, and then we can appropriately socially engage and regulate our own moods and thoughts and behaviors and interact with people in the right way. So getting adjusted activates the prefrontal cortex. Did you know that pretty much every single person published in the literature that has ADD, ADHD has a left prefrontal cortex deficiency? So what do you think they need to do?
Yeah, what do you do?
Get adjusted. Stimulate your left prefrontal cortex. This is one of my favorite
Does
people.
that apply to any age?
Yep. Yes, it does. One of my favorite people, like originally first responder, had a personal testimonial. Bedtime used to be quite a stress-inducing event, approaching it like a drill sergeant, getting after the kids. After pursuing chiropractic care, he's noticed a dramatic improvement in his ability to self-regulate his stressors and his ability to adapt. So, guys, where does all this spinal crap come from? Really, it comes from
Life.
Life. Being born. 80 to 90% of all newborns, depending upon what study you reference, have a problem in their upper neck. 90% suffered birth trauma, inducing a sprain strain or what's called KISS syndrome in reference to the German physiology. But it really starts to mess up brain performance and activity, which is why my first specialty is in pediatric neurodevelopment and perinatal care. You'll see a lot of mommies and babies coming into the office. People are like blown away when they see an infant on the table. They're like, "Are you gonna snap that kid's neck?" I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna snap that kid's neck. What are you thinking?" Okay? But what we are gonna do is work on some of these small issues before they compound and become big issues. You guys know what the average age is of somebody seeing a chiropractor for the first time in their life? 45. Do you know how long it takes for the body to start to compound and build scar tissue in a joint that's not happy? 4 weeks. So you compound 4 weeks on 4 weeks on 4 weeks, and we get to 4.5 decades of damage, and you're like, "Doc, I picked up a piece of paper and like my back blew out yesterday, and I have no idea how it happened." I have an idea, but it's gonna be hard for you to understand. Okay, so we have these repetitive stressors over time, and individuals that are born via cesarean or have abnormal fetal presentations have a much higher incidences of upper cervical dysfunction. And the first thing the baby needs to learn to control is, and so if they are like this, and they start to develop flatness to their head, or they start to have latching issues, or colic, or ear infections, then these are all things that we can help with, okay? And is chiropractic care, like, in mental health new? No. Actually, if you look at the research from like the 1930s, 1950s, 1960s, there used to be chiropractic sanitariums. And chiropractors were actually the leaders in the world at that time on helping people with mental health and well-being. The statistical outcomes were vastly superior. Like, so for example, at the Clearview Sanitarium, Forest Park Sanitarium in Davenport had a 65% success or cure rate and satisfactory discharge, where at the time the Jamestown Insane Asylum, which was more allopathically run, had a 27% cure rate. This is back in the 1930s.
So why did we get rid of that?
Ooh. Good question.
Petro.
How much time? That's the right answer. How much? What time is it, guys?
10 o'clock. Almost 10 till.
All right. We can do the next advanced topic on the history of
That'd be good.
the current healthcare model. If you guys want to learn about this, please write this down. You need to understand the Rockefellers and something called the Flexner Report, which was paid for and published, and what we wanted to do with petrochemical derivatives and how to make a profit from them. And if you want to go back to the late 1800s and the early 1910s, you will find this data and understand timelines, which is really interesting to do. Really interesting as well is that in 1895, D.D. Palmer, who is considered the founder of modern chiropractic, wrote a textbook called Neurologic Tone. He was talking about stuff in the late 1800s that neurology research is talking about now.
The frequencies or something?
Yeah, tone and vibration. Yeah, super cool. But agendas and money and stuff. Okay. So multiple research studies, multiple case studies showing that people under chiropractic care have less anxieties, depressions. Study. And the side benefits of the literature shows us that people under chiropractic care that don't have any issues at all, they're coming for general wellness, will report improvement in everything else under the sun. Okay? Because the power that made the body heals the body. Your body's designed to communicate with itself. If it's not communicating effectively, it can't work the way that it's supposed to. Okay? So neurology is step 1. Gut health is step 2. We've been starting to very tentatively be using these gut health programs with very, very, very high clinical success. So if anybody is interested, no, this is not a sales thing, it's not a pressure thing. If anybody is interested in having a conversation about step 2, gut health, okay, doc, I understand step 1, we got a plan, we're rocking and rolling. I really need to dial in my nutrition, my hydration, my supplementation. I want to get off X, Y, and Z. How do I do it? This is how we do it. Okay, so if you guys want to start to dive into some gut health stuff, please just ask. Happy to help you with that.
It works.
It works very, very well.
You have to work.
There, thank you, Paula. I was going to ask you to say that.
And
Yes.
you think it's going to be harder than it is, but you start seeing positives so early on that I think it incentivizes you to just keep on track.
If you can make it for the first 2 weeks,
Yes,
first 2 weeks are difficult, because it's a
back on.
Right.
I have been non-compliant and I cannot.
nobody's perfect, right? The cool part is, once you do this though, you have a blueprint, a framework to go back to. It's like, okay, cool, I learned how to help myself the first time, I just gotta go reproduce the model again. And just start from the ground up, and the really cool part about these programs too is they teach you how to test yourself for food sensitivities. So that way, I mean, it saves you a ridiculous amount of money in diagnostic testing, but now you can understand, okay, I'm off track, I'm inflamed, I'm feeling super depressed, my digestive system's messed up, I have diarrhea, and X, Y, and Z is happening inside me. Cool, let's start testing, let's go back to the basics, and let's see what's causing an inflammatory response in my body. And you test it, and you're like, cool, I gotta cut this, this, and this out for a 90-day window of time. I'll retest in 90 days and see how my body's doing.
And the recipes are amazing.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. So, so guys, if you want to have a conversation about this stuff, please just ask. I'm happy to help you with it. However, I really want you to be serious about making that choice, because I don't like, we don't sell stuff to sell stuff. Okay, like that's just not us. That's not me. So if you do want to take on this challenge, you are welcome to do so, and it will yield a wonderful benefit. But it is going to take work. It's not easy. It's going to take some lifestyle modification, but I implore you to do so, because you will be so much better for it. And it'll cover if we're working on neurology and nutrition, it's going to really cover like 95% of our bases, and you will notice a massive difference in your well-being. So if you guys want to dive in, let me know. I'm happy to help you. But this was our Be Hard to Kill seminar series on mental and emotional well-being in reference to what is currently being talked about in the literature. I hope this was a blessing to you. Next one is going to be on sleep, as we are heading into fall. So if you guys want to learn a little bit more about how does sleep work? Because if you explain sleep to like somebody who's not human, it would blow their mind. They're like, hey, what do you do at night? Just go unconscious for like 8 to 12 hours, completely involuntarily, and then I wake up and do life again. So you die? You died for 12 hours? It's like, no, this is this whole thing. So if you guys want to learn more about sleep, you're welcome to come. Be happy to talk about it. Okay? But I hope you guys are blessed. Have a lovely evening, and look forward to caring for you.
Dr. Evan,
Yes.
what's the book that's going to be used in the next one?
Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep.
Yeah, so
Dr. Matthew Walker, PhD. We're going to be talking about his work